You have heard how Parsifal was received at the court of King Arthur. He had found little sympathy for his youthful ardor. The king in his courtly manner, Sir Kay in his rude fashion, had both harped on his youth and lack of experience. The king, out of kindness, wanted to protect him from getting hurt by the Red Knight. Sir Kay, out of unkindness, had wished him to get hurt and to be taught a lesson by it. Neither had given him a word of encouragement. It is an attitude young people are bound to encounter often in life, and which, like Parsifal, they are bound to resent. But if their heart is set on something, as Parsifal was set on the red armor, they will go for it, just the same as Parsifal did. It is in features like this that one can see the great human understanding of the medieval troubadours who composed the story of Parsifal. It is in features like this that the vast gap between our time and their time, our world of mechanical process and their world of more simple conditions, is bridged. It is features like this which create a link between us and Parsifal as he rode out to the meadow for his encounter with the Red Knight. Hither the Red Knight had put the golden goblet down on a stone to be ready for the fight. As soon as one of King Arthur's knights came in, answer to his challenge. But it was no knight in armor who came riding towards him, but the young man he had asked to carry his message. So the Red Knight asked, "Are none of King Arthur's knights coming to fight me for this cup?" "No," said Parsifal, "but I asked King Arthur for the splendid red armor that you wear, and he said I can have it. So take it off. I can hardly wait to put it on." "Listen," said the Red Knight, "are you quite sure that of all the great knights at the Round Table, none has the courage to come fight me?" But Parsifal was in no mood for explanation. He cried, "Take off your armor. Put down your arms. I have told you already they are mine. King Arthur gave them to me." "Why, that's very generous of him," says the Red Knight. "He might just as well have given you my life as well, for you will have to take my life first before you can take my armor." "It's all the same to me," said Parsifal, who was getting very impatient. "If you don't hand the things over willingly, you may very well lose your life as well as your armor. So come on and hand it over, what King Arthur gave to me." The Red Knight treated the whole thing as a joke and said, "And by what deeds have you done to deserve such a rich reward as my beautiful armor?" "Oh, I shall earn what I deserve," Parsifal pleaded angrily now. "I shall earn it now." And with these words, he rode close to the Red Knight and reached over to grab his bridle. The Red Knight reversed his spear shaft, took it in both hands, and struck Parsifal with such a force he fell right off his horse. Parsifal scrambled to his feet, and as soon as he stood up, there came another glancing blow that tore some skin directly from his scalp. At that moment, a blazing fury seized Parsifal. There was a red haze before his eyes now. Blood was pounding in his ears. He saw his throwing spear lying on the ground now. He quickly picked it up, and with marksmanship the years in the forest had given him, he sent it straight through the Red Knight's eye and directly into his brain. One moment the tall red figure was upright in the saddle, and the next he was tumbling down to the ground. In Parsifal's mind there was only room for one thought. Now this armor is mine, his weapons are mine, and his horse is mine as well. With clumsy hands he tore at the helmet, but no experience with the straps that he held the knight's armor together. He could not get it off. He fumbled with the sword belt with no better luck. At this moment the page, Evenet, who had watched the whole encounter, recovered from his amazement at the unexpected outcome. He came running along and said, "I can hardly believe what I saw. You brought down a great and famous knight, but let me help you with the armor. You don't know how to handle these things yet." And so, with the page's help, the dead knight was stripped of his armor, and the page said, "Now, take off the things you are wearing and put the fine clothes on that go under the armor." "Oh, no," said Parsifal. "I wouldn't dream of changing these clothes. These are the clothes my mother gave me. I wouldn't exchange these clothes for the finest clothes in the world." So no matter how much the page pleaded with him, Parsifal would not give up his funny patchwork coat. And so in the end, Parsifal was encased in the red armor from head to toe, but under it he wore the clothes which his mother gave him and had made for him right from the forest. He did not know it, but this strange combination was a true picture of himself, who had a knight's outer trappings, but not yet the inner trappings, the inner aims and obligations that made a knight a true knight. When Parsifal was at the last in full knightly attire and seated on the red horse, he said to Evenet, "To you I give the red knight's fine clothes, and the horse that has carried me until now. Take the golden goblet from yonder stone, and bring it back to King Arthur, for I am not going back to his court. I was insulted there today by Sir Kay, and a lady was made to suffer for my sake. One day I shall come back, when I have proved I am as good as any of Arthur's knights, and then the wrong done to the lady will be avenged. Give my greetings to the king." And with these words he rode away proudly and happily in his red armor. Now he had become the Red Knight. The page brought the news and the goblet to King Arthur, and there was a great wonder at the court that this youngster had slain Uther, a knight of great renown. But Arthur said it was not a knightly combat, for knights are forbidden the use of hunting spears when fighting each other. And it was only a stroke of luck that he made a deadly throw. In truth, the youngster will not last long. The next night experience with him will be the end of him. To Uther, his dead enemy, King Arthur gave a beautiful burial worthy of a great and noble lord. But as Parsifal, in regards to him, the king was mistaken if he thought he would soon lose the new armor and his life, because good luck was with the youngster, and the whole day he met no other knight who would have challenged him to a fight. But towards the evening, Parsifal came to a castle surrounded by great walls and a deep moat with a drawbridge across it. An old man was in fine clothes stood at the drawbridge, looking out on the road. Parsifal, as was his habit, said, "Greetings to you, as my mother has told me." The old gentleman was puzzled by his strange greeting. He was also puzzled to see a knight in such great splendor, carrying his shield and spear in the most clumsy fashion. And so, driven as much by curiosity as by the rules of hospitality, the old gentleman, named Gurnemont was his name, invited Parsifal to be his guest for the night, an invitation which the young man, tired from the unaccustomed weight of the armor on him, gladly accepted. Gurnemont was the host, was not a little surprised when his servants helped the guest out of his armor. Why was the fellow wearing this funny patchwork clothing of a fool? But Gurnemont was too well-mannered to be inquisitive or ask questions. Parsifal, however, had no such scruples in understanding. For him, the inside of the castle was full of things he's never seen before, and he had hardly stopped asking questions from the moment he stepped inside the courtyard, asking what this is and that is. What were those boards sitting with hoods over their head in the cages? Those are called hunting falcons. Why were there basins of water and towels hanging in the banquet hall? Because eating with one's hands made the fingers greasy, and so we had to clean them. And why is this tower so high? It's so high to see approaching enemies from afar. He hardly stopped asking questions until they sat down to their meal, and then the old Gurneman said to him, "I can see, my young friend, that you know very little of a knight's way of life." Parsifal admitted candidly that he did not. "But," he added, "I am very anxious to learn." "Well," said Gurneman, who had taken a liking to this eager young man, "I am willing to be your teacher, and you can stay here and learn with me." Parsifal was overjoyed by this offer, and told his host how grateful he would be. Then Gurneman said with words which became fateful for Parsifal, more fateful than either he or his host could possibly have foreseen. It is so often in life that a chance word, spoken without any particular intention, can have quite unexpected and far-reaching consequences, like a spell. Perhaps it is a mercy that we have no foreknowledge of the effects of our words. The words spoken by Gurneman were certainly going to play a fateful part in Parsifal's life. What Gurneman said to Parsifal was, "As I am to be your teacher, we can start instructions right now, and one of the first rules of courtly manners, of good behavior for a knight is, don't be inquisitive. Don't ask too many questions, as you have done so since you came. Such questions may, perhaps, embarrass the person you ask. It may also show you up to be ignorant, and so either way, you will not be liked or respected for doing it." Gurneman was well-intentioned when he gave such sound, practical advice to Parsifal. Eager to live up to the rules of knightly conduct, Parsifal took the advice to heart, yet much sorrow came from it. On that evening, Parsifal told Gurneman his story, how he left the forest, how he learned of the kingdom that should be his by his rights, how he fared at Arthur's court, how he gained the Red Knight's armor, and he learned that possessing the armor did not make him a knight, that only when he had been trained and instructed would his host, Gurneman, perform the ceremony called accolade. That in itself would make him a knight. And so Parsifal stayed with the noble Gurneman and learned the proper use of the spear and sword. He learned the rules of knightly combat, and he learned the rules of courtesy. Never had a master a more willing pupil, and so it was not long until the day when Gurneman touched his shoulder with the flat of his sword and said, "Parsifal, I dub thee knight." When Parsifal left the castle, he no longer wore the fool's dress under his armor that his mother made him. He no longer greeted people, mentioning his mother. He was no longer ignorant in the waves of the world. Yet knighthood was not a matter of knowing these things. It was a matter of deeds. In strife and in battle, in venture and danger, a knight had to prove his worth. And so it was in search of action, in search of foes to be challenged and conquered, that Parsifal set out when he left the castle of Gurneman. Adventure came so soon to meet him. It was in the late afternoon that he came to a great city. Outside the city there was a camp of armed men. Parsifal saw they had long ladders and wooden towers used to assault the city. The city's walls were manned by armed men, ready with bows and arrows and buckets with hot pitch to repel the attackers. The city was besieged. There was, however, no fighting going on, and no one came to bar his way as he rode past the camp to the gate of the city. He hammered on the gate and demanded entry as a stranger who had no part in this quarrel. He was let in, but the men who met him at the gate, all heavily armed, cast dark looks about him, and he heard them murmur that, rules of hospitality or not, this was no time for them to feed a useless visitor. And coming into the city, Parsifal soon understood the remark. All the people he saw there were pale, just skin and bones. No smell of cooking coming from anywhere, not from the houses or the inns. The stalls in the marketplace were all empty. From one of the haggard-looking inhabitants, Parsifal learned that the city was under the rule of a young queen named Conduiramur. From the French conduire amour, to leave to love. And he made his way to her palace. In a city under siege and suffering from starvation, the rules of hospitality for a wandering knight could not be broken. And Conduiramur, the queen, received Parsifal with great courtesy and with great apologies for the meager fare she was offering. But Parsifal was hardly aware of any food served to him, because for the moment he set eyes on that beautiful queen, who was but a girl of his own age, it was as if everything else in the world didn't matter. Everything became unimportant, and the only thing mattered was to be near her. But he could not fail to notice the grave expression on a face he thought was made to smile. In his heart, he was already resolved to be her knight, to offer his services to her, to do all that he could to dispel her troubles. It was Queen Conduiramur herself who told him of her predicament, that the armed men outside the city were troops, great and powerful, who wanted to marry her, whom she refused. The proud noble, offended by this refusal, had resorted to force. The siege, then, had been a long period of hunger and already worn the people down, and they could not resist the enemy any longer. But so proud was King Rung, the rejected suitor, of his strength and skill with arms, that he offered to withdraw his troops if any of Conduiramur's knights would meet him and defeat him in a single combat. But none of her knights, as weakened as they were by hunger, had dared to accept this challenge. When Conduiramur finished her tale, her eyes met with Parsifal's, and what he read in the glance was both a request and promise. If in that moment Conduiramur had asked him to fight the Lord of Hell, he would have done it. He would have undertaken that task happily. But fighting a mere mortal for her sake, that would be a sheer pleasure and joy, the very thing he longed to do. When he promised Conduiramur to fight King Rung in a single battle, he felt happier than at any time since he had left the forest. When the great lord King Rung was told that one of Conduiramur's knights had accepted his challenge, he thought of the combat as a pleasant interlude in tedious business of laying siege to the city. He had never met his equal in battle or tournament, and looked forward to claiming another victim to his skill and strength. It was a battle that was watched from both sides, anxiously from the walls of the city, eagerly from the encircling camp. From a great distance, two knights began to ride against each other. First slowly, then faster and faster. The horses covered the distance between them, the knights holding their long spears at rest, pointing at each other's shields. Boom! They crashed into one another. So much force that both spears broke, and the horses sank to their haunches. Both knights dismounted as quickly as their heavy armor would permit. They drew their swords, and they struck each other. Their shields were hacked to pieces, but they still fought on, exchanging blow for blow. But by now, King Run, who had been so confident of his strength, began to feel strained. His sword arm was very heavy as lead, and then Parsifal struck him right in the helmet with so much force that the blow sent King Run staggering. A second blow sent him crashing to the ground. Then the next moment, a Parsifal sword was now at King Run's throat, in the space between the helmet and body armor. "Go on, then," croaked the fallen man. "I would have done it to you. Kill me." "I give you another choice," said Parsifal. "You have to swear to obey 2 conditions. One is that the siege of the city is lifted, and the other is that you betake yourself to the court of King Arthur and place yourself at the service of the lady who was struck in the face for my sake. And give King Arthur greetings from the Red Knight." King Run was not such a fool as to throw his life away, so he swore to abide by these conditions. And so Parsifal returned as victor to Condwyrmur. And it was no surprise one to bear that he married her, and he became king of the city called Belrepuer. He was happy, but the real trials of his life were still to come. He had his share of good fortune, but had yet to learn the necessary lessons of grief and sorrow.